I definitely invest in the founder and to some extent their past successes. How have they handled gnarly situations? You kind of have to be very quick on your feet in order to survive because there's just so much competition out there.
Welcome to She Invests. Join us every week for conversations focused on the growing number of female angel investors, the real unicorns. You'll hear from existing female angel investors, VCs, and fund managers on their investment thesis. From deal flow to exits, they will share the best practices that contribute to their success. Female angel investors will be equipped with the tools and resources to confidently activate their capital in order to make an impact in their community and the global economy. With your host, active angel investor and founder of Hera Angels, Dr. Sylvia Ma.
For today's She Invests podcast, we have the phenomenal Mimi Hui, who is currently an entrepreneur exploring opportunities in blockchain and artificial intelligence. She has 20 years of broad functional knowledge with both startups and Fortune 50 companies. She's led diverse teams in launching SaaS, API, and workforce enabling related offerings. She also founded Canal Mercer, a boutique design agency. She has a proven track record that spans 8 countries and 4 continents with well-known brands such as Comcast, Pepsi, Coke, Chrysler, Fiat, Bank of America, Vodafone, and the BBC. Additionally, she's worked on curriculum for NYU's STEAM program for underrepresented teens. Woohoo! A product monetization strategy for the mix in microfinance, and is a supporter of open source. She holds degrees in computer systems engineering and industrial design and dabbles in financial writing, MadameMoneybags.com. She sits on the board of Tending and is an avid runner and cyclist and a member of the NYC Resistor. Mimi and I met at a Pipeline Angels bootcamp, and it has been such a pleasure to have her as part of my extended angel network family and sisterhood of the Pipeline Fellows. So welcome to the show, Mimi.
Well, today we have Mimi Hui on the podcast, and it is just a pleasure to have you on the podcast because we met at Pipeline Angels and just loved always hearing about your successes. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
So Mimi, let's take us back to that time that we met at Pipeline. How was Pipeline? Why did you get involved in Pipeline, and what has it been? So I know that's like a 3-part question, but why did you seek out Pipeline, or how did that come about?
Well, it's kind of funny. I would say, gosh, I think it was back in 2011. I worked on a product for a company called The Mix, THEMIX, and they are either a nonprofit or a not-for-profit. They specialize in doing microfinance for almost anyone throughout the world. So they have this platform where they were collecting a lot of data. And I ended up working with them because I was interested in microfinance. I'd never really worked in that area before. Also was interested in this kind of social enterprise. So the model where you do good investing in organizations that are doing something great for their community. And one of the things I found about that was that they have this one vector that can be checked off, which is a woman founder. And they had found that the small companies that throughout the world where there were women entrepreneurs, those companies did better financially. And I thought this was fascinating, that this was even a selection criteria. So that was, I think, the thing that initially sparked my interest in funding underrepresented groups in particular. The other thing is that my background is in product development, and I ended up getting into product development from technology. I was actually an electrical engineer and a computer programmer. I did that for a few years, but found that a lot of things that were being built were not being built for the user. I'm just finding that more and more. There are very few things that are built for women, and there are very few things that are built for women by women. And we're over 50% of the population. So these are the things that kind of drive me in terms of looking into ways of potentially funding underrepresented communities. Pipeline came on my radar probably 2 years or 3 years before I joined, but I was reintroduced to Pipeline by a friend of mine and one of my former engineering managers. Her name is Myra Benjamin. She's fantastic. She was looking into Pipeline. And so I joined Pipeline to surprise her because I was hoping that we were in the same cohort. But unfortunately, she changed her mind and wasn't in the same cohort. So I showed up, I'm like, wait a minute, what happened here? So that's how I ended up at Pipeline. Now, what were the other two parts?
Well, Pipeline. We jumped right into Pipeline, so I just wanted to kind of frame that a little bit. Pipeline Angels is an angel training organization launched in April 2011, and now I didn't know this because I'm on their website. Over 200 members have graduated from their boot camp and have invested more than $4 million in 40 plus companies via their pitch summit process. So really it's about diverse angels becoming part of this new face of angel investing around diversity, around women, LGBT, and making sure that we give those opportunities to ladies to become angel investors and to be able to invest $5,000 into a company. So it's kind of like tiptoeing into that angel investing world. So that's what Pipeline Angels is all about. And anybody who's interested in angel investing, I would say, because of my experience, I don't know what you would say, but I know what you would say. You would say, awesome opportunity to get involved. It's just a great organization with wonderful ladies who support you all along the way.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump off of that point. When I joined Pipeline, that was kind of my intent, was to learn how to invest in smaller companies. Like you said, kind of dip my toe in. And I thought that I would come out of Pipeline, knowing how to invest and, going off and making investment. And really, the truth of the matter is that as an individual investor, I just don't have this massive sum of capital that I can infuse in one company. And so I went to Pipeline thinking I'd come out as an individual investor, but I really left Pipeline with this amazing community of women that I've met that were in similar places and have kind of a similar ethos towards investing. That said, each of us are so drastically different from each other. So it was just a phenomenal experience because it's so difficult to meet other women that are at this place in life. And a lot of us are kind of trying a lot of different things, putting ourselves out there. And that was really nice. I felt like I had met a sisterhood of like-minded people.
I love how you say sisterhood because I actually wrote a little article on LinkedIn about the sisterhood of Pipeline. Interesting that we use the same language, and that's kind of what Pipeline is all about. Is that you have that community of like-minded individuals, like you said. I've actually touched base with a couple of them, saying, "Hey, I'm considering this investment. Can you walk me through what you would do or what your recommendation is?" Because we're so different, we really can leverage each other's talents.
Yes, and it's really fascinating because, there's a lot of talk about diversity, especially in the Valley these days. And I think my approach to diversity is really around diversity of thought. I don't really care what someone looks like. I mean, you could be a purple dinosaur. That would be actually fantastic. If you have a different methodology or different thought process of either how you invest or how you look at the world, I am extremely interested in that because I come to the table feeling very humbled and really saying, you know what, I don't know everything and it's impossible for me to know everything and I don't necessarily need to know everything. And it's just more fun to be collaborative and understand where other people are coming from. And that could be from a product design standpoint. That could be from a investing standpoint. That could just be from a life standpoint. One example is I was actually talking to one of my Pipeline sisters, as I like to say, the other day, and she was asking me about something. And I said, well, have you considered doing it this way? And she's like, oh, I actually didn't consider doing it this way. And I know that there have been times when I've called her up and said, okay, here's a problem that I'm having. It's just great to have a sounding board of someone that's not like me. I think it's really critical because that's how the ideas get really fleshed out. That's how you get a better organization or a better company, is really, I think, fundamentally having that pure respect for someone's idea and what they bring to the table, regardless of what the packaging is, right? Like, that is the packaging on the outside is really less important. Age, race, gender, whatever, sexual preference. It's for me, it's about the ideas that you bring to the table and how you approach life. And everyone has a very different approach to that. And Pipeline was really fascinating in that there were so many women that were very, very different from me. And I value all of their insight and feedback. It's been amazing.
And when we can make better decisions when we can do all that due diligence together with different thought processes and different experiences, all of that makes for a better decision making at the very end.
It's less weight on each of our shoulders. That's the thing that was really fascinating. There was at one point after we'd gone through the process, I had reached out to, I think it was maybe everyone in our cohort and said, hey, I'm at this life decision point and I could use some, like, this is not investing related, but I could use some advice, right? How would you approach this situation? And the situation was really around, around marriage and finances. And I was just blown away by the advice I'd gotten from folks that gave me some very personal insight on, hey, you might want to consider doing this versus that, because this is how it may affect you if you do it, one way versus the other. So I just felt very inspired by that experience, and I definitely would want to pay that forward and do try to pay that forward.
Awesome. And that experience, walk us through that. Who did you, as a cohort, so Pipeline Angels, we invest all together in a one business as a cohort. Who did you guys invest in and why did you invest in them?
We invested in Tending, which is an organization that provides a service for caretakers of their geriatric parents, typically. So there's just this real gap in the marketplace for people to manage the daily activities of being a caregiver. And so that they provide a platform to help with that. We were lucky in that we had gotten a lot of great companies that came in and pitched. And the experience itself was really amazing because all the entrepreneurs that pitched were able to stay in the room to view the other pitches. So they were able to learn from each other. So I just love that whole kind of rising tides mentality. That definitely agrees with me. And so what happened was we invested in Tending, and we decided on Tending because we just really loved the founders of Tending. We saw that they have a lot of chutzpah and a great road to success and tackling a real world problem. That said, when we got down to the final three, it was really hard to make a decision because they're all really fantastic. So there was a lot of deliberation in terms of who we should invest in. So it wasn't a light decision, but yeah, it was a decision that we made as a group.
So what I heard was that why Tending is the founders were phenomenal, great idea, and solving a huge problem. Anything else that kind of spoke out to you guys when you're making that decision? Because sometimes whenever we are making decisions, what are the top things that really are the game changers, to allow for the decision to be made to invest?
I would say that the way that I would answer that question in the beginning of the process, let's say 2 years ago, when I first started investing and now, is very different. And I remember when I first started, everyone would say to me, you know what, it's really about the founder. You really should invest for the founder and less the idea, because this is the person that's going to make it or break it. I thought, yeah, that's great. But coming from the business side of things, I definitely want things that scale, things that have impact. And that's clearly very important to me. However, now I would say, yeah, it actually has a lot to do with the founders. If the entrepreneur that's pitching is, let's say, not coachable or not able to bring on the right team or not able to address the market or pivot quickly enough, that's really not going to be a successful investment. They'll just burn through a lot of money. So I think that at this point, I definitely invest in the founder and to some extent their past successes. How have they handled gnarly situations? You kind of have to be very quick on your feet in order to survive because there's just so much competition out there. And while there is a lot of money flowing around, it's very, very competitive.
That's how I do. I'm an early stage investor as well, and I think that when you're early stage like we are, you're really looking at that founder. I love that perspective.
Yeah, and there are also a lot of things that people can do before they even roll up to officially pitch. I know, for example, that Golden Seeds, which is, I'm sure as you know, I think they're mostly angel investors, mostly women angel investors, excuse me.
Yes, yeah, they are.
They actually have something, I don't know what their official term for it is, but it's kind of like an office hours thing. I think it's once a month. If you're an entrepreneur, you can roll up, schedule an appointment, roll up, talk to them for 15 minutes, and they'll give you some rapid fire feedback. And that's critical, getting feedback from people who can help you vet out your ideas as an entrepreneur is, I think, very, very important. And there are a lot of people who roll up to pitch that haven't gotten that feedback or they've gotten feedback that maybe is a little bit too complimentary. I think that it's really important to get constructive, critical feedback because otherwise you can't improve. If everyone thinks you're great, you're not going to be able to know what to change or what to pivot.
Yeah, and I think on the alternate side too is that I know Golden Seeds does have office hours. Hera Angels in San Diego also has. We call it Angel Access Hours every other Thursday. And on the angel investing side is both sides. It's that entrepreneurs should come up to any opportunity like that to get that feedback. But then as an angel investor, at seeing more deals and seeing how people pitch at different levels, let's say on a pitch night versus in an office hour is actually very extremely kind of opening up. I've heard so many pitches during the office hours that I'm like, oh, okay, that one's a good one. That one's not. How does the founder actually take the questions that I give them? That's part of my due diligence as an investor. So that I just wanted to kind of give that side of it too. Have you ever been involved with office hours of anything?
I've been involved in other, not office hours particularly, but I've been involved in, what was it? There was a fintech kind of, it was like a soft pitch with mentorship. I've been involved in those and they've been great because you can really, like you said, as an investor, I think it's really an opportunity for the potential investor to find out more about the personality and the company, about the entrepreneur overall. It's a bit more relaxed because they're not necessarily pitching you. For the entrepreneur, it's an opportunity to build a relationship. It's kind of like pre-sales.
Yes, exactly.
And so, because there's absolutely no commitment at that time of anyone funding, it's also a little bit more relaxed in a way. So what I found is that, I don't only listen to pitches by women entrepreneurs. I listen to pitches across the board. What I found is that there are some people who don't do very well to feedback of any nature. And so my take is that if I'm a potential investor, and I'm listening to your pitch and I have 20 plus years of industry experience, in high tech. And this is an area that the entrepreneur is getting into. And I'm saying like, hey, you might want to look at this, that, and the other thing. I never really leave people with more than three things because I can't remember three questions as you've seen already. And if their initial reaction is super defensiveness, then it really already sets off a major red flag for me.
Yeah, I find that as well. As an angel investor, I just don't like that when they can't take that feedback.
And it's for their benefit. I'm not getting any. If I'm giving someone feedback in this 15-minute session, I'm not really getting any benefit in it because I'm not an investor at the time. I'm doing this. I don't want to say the goodness of my heart, right? But it's my time that I'm investing in paying this forward. So I could also not give the feedback, and that's really not going to help anyone.
And paying it forward, I'm going to take that a little bit to the next question is that I heard that a woman was a mentor to you. That's who brought you into Pipeline. How do you feel about that mentoring piece? Because I think it is very important for female angel investors to have a mentor.
So Myra isn't so much a mentor as she is a friend. But I think that, in mentorship, it's not necessarily about someone that's already paved the path. And sometimes it's just about someone that may be one step ahead in some way. One of the things I find with women in particular, and this is not just in angel investing, but in a lot of things, is that we tend to over prepare as compared to guys. And so we'll want to read all the books. We'll want to take all the classes. We'll want to ask 15 people who have done this brilliantly. And then we'll want to read more books and get certifications before we even put ourselves out there. And it's really what I found is that I've been fairly successful in just kind of going for it to some extent and being less afraid of the feedback that I get from whatever it is I'm doing. And I just presume that maybe the first time around, it's not going to work out. And that's okay. It's just feedback. It's not failure. And I think that's really, really critical. So, with Myra, she was thinking about doing angel investing. I'm actually not sure if she actually ever did. But I would say from a mentorship position in terms of women that have been very influential for me, there's really one person in particular that was super influential to me. Her name is Bobby Thomas. She is the mother of a college friend of mine. And she was someone that believed in me when I was 17. So she kind of got to me really early and just imparted a ton of amazing advice at a time when I was very open to it and when I honestly really needed it. So she's been fantastic.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I think that mentors really make a difference in all of our decision making. I always, in all of the podcasts that we've had, I always say my biggest mentor is Angela Lee from 37 Angels, because she coached me through, mentored me through my first investment. So I couldn't have done that first investment and become the investor that I am without her, because I really just called her up and said, I need some help. It's great to have those people that believe in you. So we've been talking about mentoring, and that's one of the things that I think is very important for women. But also, we've talked a little bit even before the podcast about women and how we deal with balance. And I don't think there's any balance in life, but how do we deal with situations and also opportunities? So challenges, opportunities, and sometimes it's mentoring that helps us. Can we have a conversation about that? About recognizing an opportunity?
Sure.
As a woman?
I casually mentor a bunch of different people. Some of them are people that have worked for me previously that still, I still get text messages every now and then. My favorite one was one of my former interns. I helped her negotiate a higher salary, and she ended up getting, it was something ridiculous, like a 71% jump in salary as a result of the negotiation. And she totally deserved it. She was being drastically underpaid at the time. I think my attitude towards life generally is that sometimes we're handed opportunities, but it's challenging to see that they're opportunities because they may look like a stinking pile of poo. And so I hear this a lot from different people, and not just women, just people in general that would say things like, man, I really hate my boss because, she or he is giving me all this really crappy work. So obviously this person doesn't respect me. I'm kind of like, no, not exactly. Those are opportunities to grow. If you can see the benefit of something and reframe that as, hey, this is a benefit, and you really need to be able to see that benefit. I mean, if someone's giving you a bunch of paperwork to do, that there might not be any benefit in that, right? But I feel that if you can reframe a situation, it's extremely critical in terms of growing. I would say the bulk of my growth in anything has been when things are not extremely comfortable. I used to be a runner, and I remember at one point I was training for a marathon, and I had this kind of cramp in my gut, and I was slowing down, and I looked at my coach. I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to die. He's like, do you have a cramp in your gut? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, just run through it. It's going to go away in maybe a mile. I'm like, you're crazy. Like, I don't want to run through it. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll trust you on this one. I ran through it and it went away. And sometimes I feel that some of those really painful points, it could be in sports, it could be in working with people. They're really opportunities to figure things out. So, if you have a particularly difficult relationship with a colleague, a parent, a child, whatever it is, that's really, in my world, that's really the universe saying, hey, here's a way of trying something different. But if we keep trying the same thing and it's not working, it's, that's not a good path forward. So I think that the world presents itself with a lot of opportunities. And the bigger question is, can we recognize them as opportunities versus just, a sticking pile of poo? Because a lot of my growth has been from working with really terrible managers. Luckily, I haven't had too many of those, because it gave me insight on what not to do. And that's as important, maybe even more important than what you should be doing, what I should be doing. So that's my general philosophy.
I love that, because that's about as a woman too. It's not just women, but we have to go through all of those pieces of our lives, professionally and personally, to get us through a certain situation.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that a lot of folks are more apt to say, you know what, maybe I'm not good enough to do this. Or on the opposite side, a lot of people front and say, oh, I'm so much better than this. And I think there's kind of this middle path to look at a situation and really think, is this something that, what can I get from this? What kind of feedback can I get from this? When I was very young, my dad gave me some amazing advice. My dad's just like the deliverer of tons of great advice. I'm glad that I was able to appreciate that, while he's still around. But one of the things that he said to me is like, Mimi, people are going to give you feedback, and you have to look at that feedback and wonder where they're coming from. Are they coming from it? Are they giving us feedback out of a place of fear because they've not been successful in doing this thing and they don't want you to fail and they care about you in that way? Are they giving us feedback out of jealousy because they don't want you to succeed and they're trying to prevent you from succeeding? Or are they giving us feedback because they're just not aware of the situation? Maybe they don't have all the context, or for any other reason that they might be giving the feedback. And really think about it in these ways and see what you want to take with you and what you can say, thank you so much for the feedback, but it's not really applicable to me. But thank you for caring. And I think that attitude towards life is really special. And I didn't realize just how special that was until, I've gotten older, to be honest.
Very insightful, because we have that base of who we are. And kind of going off of that a little bit, that base of who we are, what we do on a consistent basis. We've talked about Pipeline with you, and how you got involved with tending and being an investor there. What is your investment thesis in general?
I am a big believer in diversification. So, angel investing is, I would say, a small percentage of how I invest. I like to look at a number of different opportunities. I also like to try things in a measured way. So, for example, there was a platform that allowed everyday people to purchase a set of stocks, and, for example, 30 stocks, buy and sell it for a very low price. And I thought that was really fascinating. So I tried it out. It wasn't for me. There was a lot of stuff that didn't work out from a usability standpoint. It kind of drove me crazy. And then just in terms of what the amount of involvement that I would need for that investment, I just realized that, that's kind of like me running my own ETF. I don't really have the time for that. So it wasn't for me. But I threw I can't remember, maybe $5,000 into it just to test it out so I could be familiar with it. So I think that it's good to be able to try things out because everyone has a different investing philosophy. And what works for me may not work for you. may not work for anyone else. I've owned rental properties in the past, and some of the folks that have found out about this have come to me and said, "Oh, that clearly is the road to riches." And I'm kind of like, "No, it's a road to freaking headache." It's not for everyone. And people be like, "Well, why? Like, you just sit back and collect the check." I'm like, "No, it's not like that. It's really a very people centric role. It's probably the most people centric role outside of retail, but the longer relationship. I mean, you should care about your tenants. You should care um, if they're able to meet the rent, if they are destroying your building. There are a lot of things to consider. Local rules, local jurisdictions, it's different everywhere. So I think that, my general philosophy is diversification. And I also like to get the help of people that I feel are more expert than I am. Recently I've want my portfolio reviewed, and I reached out to 5 different companies to say, "Hey, would you please take a look at my portfolio? And I'm curious to see what your suggestions would be and where you think I am." So I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of both vetting an investment or a firm that would help you invest or whatever it is before you actually invest. But then there is also the propensity to over educate and then never get in the game. And that's also something that I try not to do. So for me, in terms of making investment decisions, it's usually a fairly quick decision.
Interesting. Getting into the game is you've obviously already got into the game and making that decision quickly. I love that because some people have, let's say, a 6-month usual time frame. Some people have just, they have to do at least a couple, 40, it says in Halo report, you need to do at least 40 hours of due diligence to do that investment. So you're a little bit quicker in that decision-making process.
I'm very quick about the decision-making process, and I've come to realize that that's potentially unusual. I used to work for a very large company and have gone through leadership training. One of the exercises that we went through was there's this kind of decision-making tree. So you have this stack of paper, you read through it, and after each question, make a decision, and you move on to the next point in the path. And they actually have this kind of like Z lined up, on the floor. And I found that I was at the end of the path when the rest of my colleagues were at step 2. I'm not sure that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just the way that I am. And for any of the real estate transactions that I've made, I've known within 30 seconds of walking in whether or not I want to be involved with it. I would at least have a definite no. And so I think that, I'm sure that I've lost out on some opportunities because I've made those decisions that quickly. But I'm pretty comfortable in making decisions very quickly.
Very interesting because that money decision is sometimes something that some female investors are a little bit slow on, or don't really have that sense of urgency. I don't know what it is, but I love that you have that really quick money decision tree or money decision path that you take. And that kind of goes into, I know that you're going to be producing a blog pretty soon called Madame Moneybag. Just wanted to kind of walk through that with you and say, okay, I love that you make decisions that way. And how are you going to, talk through this with other people in the blog?
We have this Slack channel where we talk about really everything. We have a Slack group where we talk about everything. There are different channels. So we have a finance channel. And one of the things that I've realized is that a lot of these women do not necessarily have the foundational elements to understand what to invest in, how to invest, or, what really investing is all about. They specifically don't understand taxation. And, I just want to be very clear, I'm not a certified financial anything. From the blogging perspective, it's really more a sharing of my decision-making process so other people can make better decisions. Here's an example. Currently, I am working in a contracting capacity. And one of the things to be aware of is if you happen to start your own business, let's say you're a sole prop, and you will be paying Social Security insurance. That's, I think, what is it, 7% these days on the first X amount. It's like 120 something $1,000. So anything over that amount, you basically make 7% more on. Right. So for me, I'm kind of like, ladies, you might want to, if you're doing this, or either if you're an entrepreneur or even if you're a regular W-2 employee, you may want to try to target your income to be over that amount because you're getting 7% more.
Yep.
Just really kind of breaking things down. Because if you look at like the IRS charts, or if you look at a lot of these financial stuff that's out there, it's really kind of written by financial people for financial people, like in the industry. Even if you look at the IRS tax chart, the way that it's structured, the first thing that it says is the percentage tax bracket that you're in. Who really knows that off the top of their head? Probably very few people. And then the next thing is what if you make a certain amount, like what that bracket is. It's really confusing. So I just feel like if people just were able to get more bite-sized bits of information along the way, that it could be beneficial. And if you start early enough, that we could start grooming, the next generation of angel investors.
I love that because that's kind of where my passion is grooming the next generation of angel investors. And I love how Pipeline does that too, of enabling, let's say, that woman to make that first decision. And you're enabling them to say, okay, I'm going to give you bite-sized bits of information so that you can get everything in order so that you can make that decision.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of folks look at Pipeline or being an accredited investor, and maybe it's a turnoff, or they shut down because they think, oh, I'll never get to that place. But if you really think about it, especially in the California area with real estate, right? If you look at net assets, if you can get into a house or a condo or something, and that starts to appreciate, that will very quickly help you along the way towards that goal. If you start putting some money away when you're much earlier in life, that could start lining your retirement fund. If you can maximize on any sort of 401k offering that your company offers, there are just a lot of different paths. If you want to be a dog walker, right, and have a side business, if you decide to maybe give up that latte once a week and it's an extra, whatever, $6, there are ways that you can have this fabulous lifestyle without spending gobs of money and really kind of start to meet your goals. So the joke about Madam Moneybags is like, oh yeah, I want to be a Madam Moneybags, as if I have like a ton of cash lying around. But how do you get there? You have to start somewhere. And it's also a little bit tongue in cheek in terms of, it's not so many of these women's blogs about money is a bit of, hey, buy my program, and then as a result, you'll be fabulously wealthy, or, be extremely frugal.
Yeah, I know.
And, we'll eat rocks. And then, and then in whatever, 10 years, you have a great digestive system, and also you'll be an angel investor. Like it's not really, I don't know how realistic that is, because I don't live that way. I don't live that way at all. I mean, I've had a very full life. I've been lucky to travel a lot, and I've lived in 8 different countries. I've done work in the same number of countries. It's whatever an individual wants of his or her own life that's important. What the world expects of you is really less important. But if you can find, I feel like if you can find that inner happiness and inner drive, and identify those maybe 3 things that give you the oomph to live, that's what's critical. And that's kind of really what Madam Moneybags will be more about, is how do you identify that? How do you get to whatever your path is? Because there is no one path.
Exactly.
There's some great financial blogs out there, but most of them kind of champion one particular path, and none of them really spoke to me in the way that I live my life. So I thought, well, maybe there's something out there that could help other people.
There's definitely a theme to your life, because everything that we've talked about in this episode has been diversity. There's something for everybody. the thought of, diversity of thought, that's what's really important to you. So I love that theme in across all the wonderful things that you're doing. Love that.
Thanks. It's sometimes it could be a little, it can feel a little bit sporadic and spread thin, but I think as I move forward, I see the thread, even if other people can't.
Oh, I see it wholeheartedly. I see it. And then I love that you're like, and I'm a really awesome decision maker and I can make decisions really quick. I'm like, oh, that's like two dipoles there of diversity and over here. And then the other side is I make decisions really quick. No diversity, no anything. I'm going to make the decision as fast as I can. Not as fast as you can, but the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, and a lot of those decisions are actually based off of input and feedback from everything else that I've seen. It's just that I make the evaluation very quickly. Because what I found is, very early on in my career, not very early on, I think it was around 2006, I ended up leaving what I was doing kind of mid-career, I would say, and exploring something very different. And I thought I really wanted to be an industrial designer. I was in my 30s at that point. And as it turns out, I didn't really want to be an industrial designer. But what I found through that process was that if I don't get feedback on something very quickly, I can very quickly go down the wrong path. And so that feedback and that feedback loop is really, really critical for me. And that's part of the reason why I make the decisions very quickly. Now, most of the decisions that I make on a day-to-day basis, they're not, huge mind-blowing decisions. They're not like I'm going to purchase a property in Costa Rica or anything like that. That's usually more of the final decision. That's not the, Monday decision, let's say.
Exactly.
The Monday decision might be like, oh, do I want to explore Costa Rica versus Vancouver or Buenos Aires or whatever it is, right? And so I think that's the thing. There's kind of there's a progression of things that happen. I think the other thing that I learned really early on in life is to take rejection. And this is absolutely critical because so many people are afraid of rejection. And I'm fine with it because either someone's going to say yes or you're probably not asking the right way. But, there's so many opportunities out there. So it's worth asking. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Someone can laugh at you, right? Someone can say no. And one thing that I'm wanting to do on Madam Moneybags is really kind of put together a tutorial on rejection. And I think if people can go out there and get rejected in small, safe ways, they'll feel more confident about asking for larger things.
Yeah, because you have that confidence in back of you. I love that. So this has been incredibly insightful. I love talking to you. I can talk to you all day, but we're ending on an awesome note, and we wanted to just finish out is a rapid fire final 4 questions. Is the first one is, what's your favorite angel investing resource?
I don't think I really have. I have a handful of people that I'm associated with that are angel investors that I kind of call up every now and then. Obviously there's Pipeline. I've met the women at Golden Seeds. They're fantastic as well. So I don't have one so far. I'm still kind of swimming in the soup, so to speak.
I love that you call up your tribe. Pipeline and Golden Seeds. That's awesome. I love it. I love that. Number 2 is, what's your favorite book?
Okay, my favorite book is actually a children's book, and it's called Good News, Bad News. And I think the author is Jeff Mack, M-A-C-K. It's about these 2 animals. I think it's like a bunny and a rat, and they go out on a picnic, and one has a really positive demeanor, and the other one's like, oh my God, everything sucks. And it's really a very it's a very simple book, but I think that it summarizes kind of the complexities of of friendship and how sometimes no one person can always be the cheerleader or the champion and always positive, and that we're all human, and we can share that experience and support each other along the way. So it's a really cute book.
How sweet. I love that. I have 3 kids, so I've read a ton of children's books, and I have not read that one. So I need to go get that one. That's awesome.
It's really cute.
So cute. So number 3 is who has been a major influence in your life? You've talked a little bit about your mentors, but anybody else?
I would say that the biggest influences in my life, my parents, actually, definitely. And this woman, Bobby Thomas, who is my friend's mom, I think she really opened up my world in terms of the arts, in terms of communication. I grew up in a very kind of culturally Chinese environment, and she was one of the people that opened my world up to other parts of the world. So she's been absolutely instrumental.
And the 4th one is, what does abundance mindset mean to you?
Oh, yeah, that's a really great question. So many people, I feel, especially these days, I'm not sure what's going on, are kind of living in fear of running out of stuff, running out of money, running out of time, running out of, I don't know. And I think that abundance mindset is kind of more, I see it more as the gestalt of life. Like, I might have only so much of something, and you might have only so much of something, but if we get together, we can make something great. So, like, let's say, I use a lot of cooking analogies because I grew up in a kitchen, but let's say, you come with some butter and I come with some flour, and together we can make some shortbread, right? Like, we couldn't do it separately. So I just feel that the abundance mindset is the coming together of different things to make more and to make life just more wonderful overall.
That insight is very good because that's very different than everybody else that has been on the podcast. So I love that, is getting people together and making it even more. Love that. So thank you, Mimi, so much for being part of the podcast. This has been so wonderful to learn more about you, and also who you are, what kind of investor you are. It's just been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Mimi.
Have a good one.
You too.
Mimi Hui is a pipeline angel and an active angel investor in her ecosystem. She really has a consistent theme across all the things that she does professionally and as an angel investor, is that she really highlights diversity of thought of the founder, diversity of thought in the angel investors and connections that she makes in the innovation ecosystem, and diversity of thought of actually making her own decisions. She finds that founders have a couple of things that make a deal be very attractive to her, is that they need to be coachable. They need to be able to bring on the right team. They need to address the market with the product that they have. They need to be able to pivot quickly enough. And the past successes are really important to her to really find out how that founder is quick on their feet and be able to handle situations that come up. And then also take feedback on themselves, on the startup, and on the idea. And I love that she is so into the sisterhood of the pipeline angels and angel investors in general. That sisterhood is that diversity of thought of being able to call up somebody and say, okay, I am looking at this deal. How can I look at this deal differently? Or what have I not looked at? So love that aspect of her. And the last thing is that she is going to be creating a new blog called Madame Moneybag. And she realizes that women need bite-sized bits of information about their financial money situation. And she is going to enlighten us with that information. So it was a pleasure having Mimi on board, and loved being part of her pipeline sisterhood of angels, and continue that conversation. Mimi is a fantastic force of female angels and a fantastic force of information about diversity of thought and diversity of leadership.
Thank you for listening to and subscribing to the She Invest podcast. Go on over to sheinvest.com for the full show notes for this episode, as well as any resources, websites, and opportunities mentioned during the show. Sign up for the sheinvest.com newsletter to learn about events like our annual Hera Venture Summit during the month of September and our She Invests monthly investor circles. Thank you for your time, talent, and treasure.